Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining us. And we're delighted to have Maxon Master Trainer and all-around expert designer, Lionel Vicidomini, joining us. Hi there, Lionel.
Hello.
And we're going to run through three sessions for creating fantasy titles using Cinema and Redshift, a little bit of Xparticles, and also comping together in After Effects. And that's why you're here, of course. You know this, because that's why you clicked on the registration link. And I just wanted to let you know that we have more titles coming as well, all through this year. And I'm on the maxon.net events page, so just go to maxon.net and hit events, and then you can see all these sessions. And here's the ones that we're running through, or at least Lionel is running through this week. And oh, by the way, I'm Simon Walker. I'm Director of Training at Maxon. I always forget to introduce myself. And we've also, we're recording this, and we record all our sessions. And if you go to YouTube and search for Maxon Training Team, then you can see all the recordings that we make for these particular sessions. And yesterday we did one on shooting for the grade and talking about different cameras and options that can help solve things. So that one is up now, as well as our regular Ask the Trainer session. So please feel free to go there. And we'll give you that link automatically as part of a follow-up email as part of this session. And also, since you're here to see cinema, let me remind you that there's a free online exam you can do, this knowledge test on the Maxon website. So if you go to maxon.net and you hit certification, then you can do this 1-hour test, which is a great investigation of your understanding of the different topics inside Cinema 4D. And it goes through a whole list of topics that actually Noseman himself interviewed many studios and asked what they'd like to see if you are going to be applying to work with them. And so here's a good cross-reference of subject matters. So it's a great chance to see that. And one other quick thing just before Lionel jumps into his subject matter is that he is a fantastic trainer, and you don't have to take my word for it. For example, on his Udemy courses, constantly we see the comments like this, where, here we go, this course is filled with super everyday useful operations, a fantastic course and highly recommended. I mean, we get these comments every time Lionel runs a session for us. So sorry to embarrass you, Lionel. I just wanted to let you know how excited we are for these 3 1-hour sessions. Oh, and by the way, we'll give you a link to 40% off. Lionel's kindly given you a discount. If you were thinking about signing up for one of his courses, we'll add those links into the session as well. Fantastic stuff. So after that big build up, I'm going to hand over to you, Lionel. There you go, make you presenter.
Yes, I'm going to share my screen. So do you see the right screen? This is the one, yes.
Yes, the one with the red giant and the clouds as well.
That's it. Okay, so I guess I shall start. So yes, as Simon said, we're going to talk about title on Cinema 4D. Actually, we're going to talk about one title I designed. This is a tutorial I made some years ago, and again, I revamped it. I worked on it to make it more modern and to investigate more techniques. And we're going to see how I created all that and some other stuff too. So this will be only this title, but we will see really in depth on how I created it. So everything is done inside Cinema 4D, and this is created from scratch. So in this first session, I will just create this title, and we're just going to talk about materials, lighting, and so on. Then on the second episode, we'll see how to work to create the background here, which are animated clouds, and how to make different kind of clouds. Actually, I tried many different techniques. They're all interesting, and we'll see one with involving Xparticles. And then on the third session, I will show you how to render flame and everything. So I don't have anything to show about this third session, but it will be very interesting because we will set everything on fire, how to make fire explosion, how to composite that inside After Effects. So just to show you, this is the raw render inside Cinema 4D, and I have a file with the final rendering to see how it looks. And we'll see, yes, a little bit about animation, how to make a title like that appear. So as you can see, the smoke effect is not footage. Those are real smoke. And we'll see how to create that inside Cinema 4D. Okay, so let's start. And I'm going to, so yes, obviously this raw render has been worked on inside After Effects, and we'll see about that also. Okay, so let's start and let's create our title. So the idea here is to make obviously a title that reminds us Harry Potter, and with kind of magical shiny metal with this great font you can find on DaFont. I could find it on DaFont, the Harry Potter font. And we're going to create it from scratch using the volume builder and a few tricks. So this is a technique I already showed, but this time we're going to go a bit deeper about it. So let's start with creating a simple text. And this text I'm going to write Red Giant. And for the font, I use a font. Oh yes, we have the problem with the broadcast. Sometimes the windows disappear. Okay, so here we have the Harry Potter, which is this one. This is this one. And we're going to make it on the middle at the default size of 200 centimeters. Okay, so this technique to make some kind of engraved text works very well with the serif font like this one. So something that has sharp edges, which is a bit fat. So we have room to work on the modeling and the material. So first I'm going to, by default, you can see here the R and the E are too close together. So one first tip you should already know is here the Kerning show 3D GUI, which allow us to change our letter and adjust everything a bit nicer. You see the I and the A and so on, so that they are not too close together. And we could go much further on that. For example, we could take here our R, we could change its size, go this way and so on. So there are many options to play with this. We could even put a letter inside another and so on. So it's very interesting to have those options. And many times people just forget about this button here. And because I have made a mess here, I'm just going here to go back to reset all. And I'll just adjust those few letters a bit. And that will be all, I think. Okay, so now I'm going to hide this. We want to create our text and we want to extrude it. So let's do it using the extrude modifier, holding Alt to create that. And we're going to change the offset to 20 centimeters, something much narrower. Okay, so I'm not going to care about the subdivision here, which are by default pretty bad because this is not even. We have many subdivision at different parts and so on. You see here, this is kind of, those are, I would say, flaws inside the font. This is amateur font, not professionally made, but we don't care because we're not going to use those polygons. We're going to put that right inside a volume builder. So we have run some wonderful session about the volume builder the team has, and I would really suggest you watch those because they are full of tricks. And here, so I'm going to change my volume builder and change the voxel size to something much narrower. So about the voxel, very quickly, for those who don't know what is a voxel. Voxel, which is a kind of 2D pixels. You can see it here. If I zoom in, I go very close. We can see here some squares just following us. They are always facing us. And those are the voxels. Okay, so we're going to change the polygons to something 3D, the voxels, which are going to fill a volume. That's the whole idea. And actually, we're going to talk a lot about voxels because this is also the technology that is used when rendering clouds, fire, and so on. Okay, so we'll see about that. But volumes are being used also for modeling, like for this example. So here, our voxel size is a kind of definition of our resolution of our title. So if you have big voxel here, you will have something very crude with a lot of aliasing. And if you have something very narrow here, 1 centimeter, we'll have something very crisp, and it will be easier for us to work with it. Okay, so now we have this sign fill here. With 1 centimeter, I'm going to add a SDF smooth because we have some jagged line. Actually, we will see them better. You can already see them here. We can see them better because we need anyway to make that a mesh. So to make it a mesh, because the volume builder is not yet polygons, it's just voxels, we need to put it inside the volume mesher. So holding Alt, and now we are back to polygons. And as you can see, we have a densely meshed surface. And we can see here the problem with the aliasing, the stepping here, which is pretty bad because of the voxels. It makes sense because your voxels are, after all, little cubes, like in Minecraft. If you have, even if you have many, a lot of them on curved surface like that, you have that kind of stepping effect. So we need to add to our volume builder here a smooth, and we have the SDF smooth Gaussian. I'm going to reduce it to 1. So now we have something much nicer like that. So NA to go back here, and we can see we have our type, which is smoothed on the corner, but still has some sharp edges. Okay, so now let's go to create our effect here on the center. So for that, we have a different option for us. I would say the easier will be to use a displaced deformer. And the displaced deformer will be filtered with some field. The field in C4D are being used for many purposes, and here it's going to be perfect to create the effect I'm right after. Okay, so let's put that inside a null object because we need it to be in a null object. So we can add now, going there to the modifier, we can use our displacer. Holding Shift will put it as a child of the null object. So let's go, and we have our displacer. And now in the shading, I need to put a shader, and I'm going to start with just simple color. So let's go to the color, and this is a white color. So it's just going to displace every polygon along its normal. So it's the perpendicular direction from the face. It's going to push it by 10 centimeter direction, vertex normal. Okay, so it creates some kind of inflated look, which could be interesting, but not for what we want to do. Okay, so now we need to restrict this effect to some part of the geometry. And that's where our fall off, the fields, are going to come in handy. So we have all the fields we want to use. We can use the special field, the solid, the spline object, and so on. And actually, I'm going to reuse our text spline. So I'm going to take our text spline and just drag it there. That's one very wonderful feature about the fields, is that you can use almost anything as a field. So I'm using the very same text I've been using so far to create our text to filter the effect on the text. So at first glance, it looks it doesn't look like anything. Because we need to change here our text, we have the option of our field, and I don't want to create something along the curve. I want to create it as a mask. Okay, still not working because I need to specify the mask projection. So along Z, always check your axis. Z is this direction, so that's fine. But if our text had been laying on the ground, I would have needed to put it on the Y axis. So here, because it's in front of us, Z axis is perfect. But mask fall off, we need to put it inside. And here we are, we have the effect we were after. So it's going just to create a fall off inside here our text. So if I just deactivate all that, we will see it's going to create some kind of black and white gradient from the edges to the center. And using this gradient is going to create, to restrict the effect and create that kind of bevel, kind of engraving. So now we just need to, if you want to change that on the volume builder, on the displacer, I'm sorry, on the fall off here, the text, we can increase the distance. And I want to increase it until we have no more any flat area. And that's it. We are done. So if I wanted to have flat area, I would just go the opposite way, like that. If you wanted to create that, for example, or even this way again. I see it works very well. If you go too far, it's just going to flatten everything. So you need to find the right amount. I think at 15 centimeter, we're just spot on. And if you want to have a deeper extrusion this way, this will be here on our object, and here the height. So if I increase, you can see, but of course, don't go too far because it's going to break and create some problems. If I hit NB, we can see our subdivision, and it's going to be stretched, we can see here, compared to that. So I think at 10 centimeter, the default value, we are fine. And now we have a very nice text, which is sharp. And what's really cool about this technique is you can change that to any text you want. So now I'm going to keep this font, but I could try some other font. So I downloaded also the Gamerthone font. Here it is. And you can see we have the same engraving. So it works very well. We could use the one from Narnia. So I went after all the major franchise. Narnia, here it is. You can see everything is updating and create a nice result. You can even try it with some font which are not meant for that. For example, sans serif font. Let's go for example, Arial. And it's going to create that kind of bevel. So you see it works. Okay, so let's go back to our Harry Potter because I think that's just the mood of this title. And we have this very cool font. Okay, now what's interesting about that is we have some very nice geometry, very nice shading. You can see here it's not too sharp. It's not too sharp because we have here in our volume builder, we have our SDF smooth. If I just deactivate here, you will see we have here our jagged line, and here also it's a sharper. With the SDF smooth, everything is nicer, and because here it's more rounded, we have it draw the attention to here the engraving on the center. Okay, from there we could do a number of things on this font. We could create some imperfection, and there are several ways to do that. We could have even finer geometry. We could play here with the volume builder. So if I change my voxel size to 2 centimeters, we have something which is smoother because there are less polygons. On the opposite, if I go to 0.5 voxel, so I have a warning, but I know what I'm doing, so I'm going to hit OK. It's going to calculate and give me this very sharp result. Okay, and here it's a bit lagging because we have a lot of polygons, as you can see. So maybe I'll go back to here this voxel size, but I think 1 centimeter is a sweet spot. It really depends on the size of your original geometry. You have to be careful because if you create a text which is, for example, 10 centimeter, obviously here the right value will be more like 0.5 or 0.2. But if you have a huge text, which will be 2 times or 3 times bigger than that, then you have to adjust here the voxel size. Okay, you're looking for polygons about this size. This is a good compromise. It's going to work and not to be too slow on your viewport. Okay, so I want to create imperfection of that. And before doing that with texture, because we are going to light very soon this title, we can do it with some modifier using 2 different techniques. So the first one will be by using here on the displacer, on the fall off, we could add on that any number of field, and especially the random field, which is just meant for that. So if I add the random field on top of the text, by default, we're going to have this result, which just completely destroyed everything. But you have to think about black and white, because here our text is, like I told you, if I deactivate everything, is going to give us a black and white gradient starting from the edges of our text. So we have white going there, white going there to the black. Actually, it's the reverse, the opposite. So it's going black from here and white to the center. If you're going to add a fractal noise, which is the random field, it's going to add texture to everything. So here, why it doesn't work? Because we're on max settings. So the black and white part of the noise is going to overwhelm the text part. So we need to use here on our random field the overlay multiply or subtract mode. So let's go with the overlay, and we can see right off the bat it works pretty well. We still have here our edges, and we have created some crevices here with our random field, and the edges of the text, I mean the sides of the text here, has not been affected by the random field because it's been filtered by the text. And then here you can just have fun with the random field and try to decrease, increase your opacity. You can change your scale as you have something which is smaller than like that. You can increase it. It's going to give you different results. Of course, you can change some different noise type. So here, the looker has some interesting results because it's going to give us a lot of detail, and then we're going to decrease the intensity. And it's going to give us already some kind of nice breakup here on the edges, some crevices and so on. We could have even more control here on our field. So I'm here on the random field, going to the remapping and working here on the remapping. So this is a remapping of the noise from the black to the white. So this is linear. And I could change here the contour to, for example, quadratic. And if I increase the curve, it's going to change the aspect of our noise. As you can see, it's going to reduce to have more of the noises visible. So it's not that obvious. So I'm going to increase the transparency, the opacity here to the maximum, and we can see here more easily. We could even use instead the curve, which is going to give us absolute control over that. Try something like that. Now just increase this way. So you have many possibilities playing with that. I'm going to decrease the overlay again to something very subtle like that. Okay, so we'll get back to that. So we agree we have really affected the geometry, which has been changed. This is not a texture effect. This is real displacement, which is very interesting. But because we don't have such a refined mesh, we won't have very fine detail. We could try here on the volume builder to lower the voxel size again. Let's go to 0.5. Yes, I know. And we will have some nicer detail, as you can see. So it made a big difference, but we have many more polygons, and it's not always a good idea to go this far. If I tried something even lower than that, I could have very big problems because if you lower the voxel size, if you divide by 2 the voxel size, actually you're going to it's a cubic expansion. I don't know how to say that in English, I'm sorry. So you're going to multiply times 3, exponent 3. So it's going to get very big very fast. You have to be careful with that. If you go from 0.5 to 0.25, it's not twice as much. It will be 9 times as much. So 9 times slower and so on. Just be careful. I'll go back to this voxel size. So we have just this subtle effect, and we will see how we can work with that. Okay, so that's it about the modeling. We didn't model anything because everything has been made by Cinema 4D. But I think that's an interesting technique to look. And now we're going to light this, okay? Because the lighting is really going to create the title, the mood of the scene and so on. And then lighting the title, we will work on the texture, on the materials, so we can add details to our text, and maybe we won't need to use here on our displacer the random field. So that's another thing which is pretty nice. We can just activate, deactivate to have some details or not to our wheel. Okay, so about the lighting, let's go. I'm going to create iron title, iron material. So it will be some metallic materials. So it will be very shiny, very reflective. You're not going to light something the same way if you have diffuse surfaces or if you have reflective surfaces. If you're going to light metals, iron, gold, and so on, everything is about the reflection, okay? Because something which is reflective is just going to reflect the world around it. It's not so, the lighting will be only created to be reflected inside the material, okay? So I'm going to create a basic material, a basic iron material. So let's go to Redshift material. And here in our surface on the preset custom, I'm going to use the iron. So Redshift ships with a few presets, which are really just starting point. But it's interesting if you just starting on Redshift to use those to understand how everything works. But then you have to go a bit further than that to really master the materials. So creating an iron material, we're going to see we have the diffuse, which is input to 0. So that means there is no diffuse. I could change the color to whatever I want. It just wouldn't care because there is no diffuse. We have our reflection with a pretty high roughness. And then here we have the final type, which is color plus edge tint. And this is going to give us that iron look. And of course, no reflection, no multi-SSS and so on, because this is a very simple material. From there, if I'm going to hit render, well, I'm going to apply the material, obviously. If I'm going to hit render, I will be very disappointed because we only have that. It doesn't look like iron at all because I don't have any lights. So always remember that there is no point in lighting something, in creating material if you don't light before. Here it's just going to be lit by the default light of the scene, which is some kind of ambient light just up your head, and it's not going to have a very interesting result. So for lighting metal, you can just try at first to use a simple dome light. A simple dome light with HDRI, which will be the best suited for that kind of purpose. So I have one I really like to use for metal and everything. Actually, I don't use many different HDRI. I always use like a dozen of HDRI, always the same. And the one I'm going to use is this one. This is very well-known HDRI, which is being used by a lot of people, and it's a studio where we have two lights and a cyclorama, so backdrop to have some nice reflection. So let's load it. And now if I'm going to start the rendering, it's updating. Yes, we have something which look more like metal. Okay. Now, if I just try with the coordinator, we can see the lighting is going to change according to what we see here. So I think I will switch to the RV, the render view, because there seems to be some problem with the streaming software we use. It didn't update, so I hope it will work better here. Let's go. Yes, that's much better. Okay, so we have our material and our dome light, and we can see here the effect of our random field. So something I could try already here. If I just deactivate my random field, I won't have all those cavities details on the type, And you can see the rendering is very different. Obviously, the texture is going to have a huge effect on your lighting. So it's interesting to be able to turn it on, turn it off, and so on. Okay, from there, our dome light is a very standard dome light. It doesn't have a lot of contrast, but it's interesting because we have some nice reflection with nice gradient, which make that kind of, well, the nice gradient we can see here on our font. So from what we could do with the dome light, we have a nice option here inside the gamma. If I'm going to override the gamma, I can lower a lot of the gamma to have something much more contrasty. So it's processing the texture because it has to calculate again, put it in cache. And that was the other way around. So let's go to, so every time it had to process the texture. Right. And you can see here it's nicer because it has more contrast. And of course, if I just move again, we have some very different result according to where we're going to shine our light. And I could just work on my lighting just using the dome light. That would be okay because it has some nice reflection. It works. But we will try to go a bit further than that. I'm going to create some custom light to light our scene. And I'm almost going to replicate the same kind of lighting we had the HDRI, but with real light. I'm going to create using Redshift light. Okay, so let's deactivate here. I'm going to hide it on the other screen. And I'm going to deactivate the dome light. And we're going to create our light. So there's several ways to do it, but I like almost using almost the same way. Let's create a null object. This null object will be on the center of the scene. And I'm going to create now a area light. Okay, so the area light is in the center of the scene also this way. And you can see with the those lines here, it's going to shine on the Z direction. Okay, I'm going to put this light inside my null object. I'm going to name this null object key for key light. Okay, now we're going to take the area light. I'm going to move it along the Z axis. Okay, the Z-axis is always the direction of where the light is going to shine. I'm going to put it around this distance. Okay, so now we still have our null object on the center of the scene, which allow me here to rotate it exactly the same way I did with the dome light. So this way I have a constant length between the light and the object. I can also move it this way or this way. So it's very interesting to have this control. And as you can see, it's always facing the direction of the text, obviously, because it's centered on this object. So I don't need to use a target light or something like that. Let's switch to the fore view. I'm going to see from this view here. So this is the top view, the front view. And here I'm going to frame using a Redshift camera. So I'm going to become the camera, clicking here, and we're going to change and center it. Okay, here we are. So let's go back here. I'm going to decrease a bit the size of our window. Okay, so this is our area light. I will decrease it again because I need to see a bit more or that. So this is our area light, and I just deactivate the dome light. So we just see here the effect of our light. And if I move it, obviously we can see the results. So here from the side, if it on the front, here I'm going to put it on the top, on the bottom, and you can see it's very interesting to create already some edges to stress where the light is coming. So something else I use very often is on my light, I'm going to use the temperature, I'm going to change the color temperature so we can identify the light. So I know this warm light is the key light. That's something also often keep at the end because we have a warm light, cool light. This is a trick being used by a lot of photographers, and we just use the same trick in 2D. So this is my key light, and now I'm going to duplicate this setup here and create a fill light. This light here, the fill light will be further, so I'm going to the coordinate of the fill light, which is this one. I'm going to put it further away. Then I'm clicking on the null object, and let's go the other side. On my light, I'm going here on general here, change the temperature to something cool. Okay, so now there's no mistake. The blue light come from the fill light, the red light, the warm light, come from the other. So now if I change on my null object the orientation, I'm going to create the mood of my scene and give the sense of direction of the light by just tweaking those light. And here on my key light, for example, I can change now the exposure, decrease it, because most of the time you don't want to have the same intensity for the two lights. Your key light should be the stronger one, but that's not a rule, an absolute rule. This is actually called three-point lighting, and you can bend it to almost anything you want. If you want to have a stronger fill light than a key light, that's possible. So here I decrease the exposure, and on our light here, if I increase it or decrease it, you can see I'm going to give a sense of direction of the whole thing. But it looks a bit flat now because I don't have anything to light in the back. Of course, because our lights are here on the front and here on the side, and on the bottom of on our font, we don't have anything. So we could deal with that with a number of solutions. One of the laziest solution would be to use a dome light, a new dome light. This time I don't want to have any background, and I'm going to decrease a lot the exposure. And going this way, I'm going now to increase, and this is just going to give me an edge here, some kind of ambient lighting on the whole scene. So now we have here our object, which is being lit from the side, from behind, and so on. Okay, but that's not very interesting because it's a very flat lighting. So what we could use instead is to use another HDRI. So let's go back to our exposure here, and I'm going to use another one. So I like this HDRI a lot too. This is a very, as you can see, we have some shape instead of this one, which is very precise. We have some shape, and it's going to create a very subtle lighting. And I like to use this one as a lighter for the whole, to create some kind of ambient mood. And then I'm going to slide it this way. And now we have almost the same result as before, but it's just, I would say, nicer. Okay, so that's it for the lighting. I could go on a lot, but I'm seeing I'm having only 15 minutes to go through some materials, so I need to accelerate a bit. Very fast, before going to the material, we have something else we need to deal with. As you can see here, we have some highlights, some blown highlights here. Instead of decreasing the intensity of the light, I like to use here on PostFX. So PostFX is going to create some tone mapping on your image. And the one I'm almost always using is always the same setup from for all my work, is using here the LUT. So I'm going to activate global. Then we have the LUT location. So it's already here selected, but I'm going to show you. If you click here, you will have a dialog box, and inside here in your data, it's going to show you this way. You want to go to the filmic LUT. Okay, filmic LUT. I'm going to take this one, filmic medium high contrast. And you need also, because it won't be selected by default, I'm going to convert to log space. Okay, and you can see it took care of the highlights. You see before, after, we have a nicer result. Then I'm going to activate the photographic exposure, and I'm going to allow the overexposure to the maximum. Okay, this way I'm going to keep a strong highlight, but thanks to this one here, to the LUT, it's not going to be too bright. Okay, so I have a good combination using those two. It's going to give us a nicer result. Okay, now about the materials. So we have our default material here, and we have our iron and the reflection. So everything goes from there. Before adding any maps and so on, let's talk a little bit about the roughness. The roughness is the blurriness of the reflection. So it's very easy to see. If I decrease the roughness, I'm going to have a sharper text. As you can see, we have some sharper highlights because the highlights are not so blurred. But because I'm using some area lights, because I'm using a dome light which has some very subtle tone, we don't see that much. But if I go to zero roughness, which will be just a mirror reflection, we can see it's starting to show a lot of black because our environment here, our dome light is mostly black. And our lights are just some spots in the space, so they're not able to light everything. That's why we have some black parts here. If I go back to our material and increase the roughness, you will see it looks like it's being more and more lit. That's just because the reflections are being blurred, and then the black is going to blend with the white and create those nice gradients, the gradients that just characterize metal surfaces. If I go too far, we'll have a diffuse material, almost the same result as you have here with the diffuse. So obviously you don't want to go that far, and by default for the metal it's 0.4, and I guess I'll go back to 0.3, which is has an interesting result. Okay, so now let's go inside our material. So I'm going to double click. It's going to open here our dialog box, and let's just dock here. Okay, so we have everything, and here I guess I'm going to fill window. So okay, we see better our text. Okay, so this is our material. This is our output. And I just want to show you, by just using bump, how I can add the details I lost when I disabled the random field. So let's use here a noise. So C for having the commander here, and I'm going to use a Maxon noise. Maxon noise, if I'm going to solo it, I'm going to see the result here on our shape. And here our Maxon noise, I'm going to use as a noise, let's use the Luca. So the Luca is going to give us that kind of noise. And I'm just going to use it with the bump map. So bump map. Let's plug it here. Texture to the input. So that's easy. Yellow goes to yellow. And then this bump map is going to our material. And this is a bit confusing. You have to get used to it, but you need to go to overall, and then you go to bump map. And again, you have, this is color coded. So you can guess this is the right result because this is some kind of light purple. Okay, I'm going to deactivate here the solo, and we have the result. And you can see the bump map has a very, very, very strong effect. And it looks like our texture has a lot of details it didn't have earlier. Okay. From there, I can just decrease my bump map to have something much more subtle like that. And you can see we have some nice result. And again, the look of those bumps are going to depend a lot on the general roughness here. So if I decrease our roughness, it's going to appear as bright spots. Whereas if I increase it, it's going to be more and more subtle. Okay, so let's go back to 0.4. And I think we have something interesting for the bump. So I won't go because I don't have the time anymore. But here on your Maxon noise, the thing I could do here very quickly, I could work here with the low clip or high clip to just limit here our noise. You can see it now appears only on certain area. I could decrease it to just have some specks here. And now with our bump maps, I could just go to a negative value like 0.1, and it looks like dense. So you see it's very nice details we couldn't really have with displacement because well, you need too many polygons. So something I could do though is just activate our random field back. And you see it's going to create the details on the geometry. And then on our displacer, I'm going to just limit it to something very, very narrow, like 6%. Okay, and now I think we have a good compromise. We have some big detail because of the noise on the random field, and the finer details here are from the bump map. Okay, so now let's see if we can just work now on the roughness, because it's always difficult on metallic surfaces to work on the roughness. I'm going to use again a noise. I could use obviously some bitmaps, but I wanted to show how to use properly noise if you want to get the result you want. For this, I'm going back to deactivate our random field so that we can better see the result. I will even here disable here our bump, so we have some very soft surface like that. It will be easier to see. Okay, so let's go back to another noise, Maxon noise. Solo to see our noise. And here I'm going to jump right away to the one I'm looking. It's the Auburn noise. The Auburn noise is going to give us those kind of patterns, okay, which are going to be very interesting for metallic surfaces. Let's increase our overall scale a bit. And now, well, we can just try what happens if we plug this to our material. If you remember, our roughness goes from 0 to 1. 0, it's pure mirror surface, and 1 is pure diffuse. We don't want that on our text. And this noise, well, 0 is going to give us, black is going to give us 0, and the white is going to give us 1. So we're going to be very far from the value we have right now, which is 0.4. So let's just take a look. And we will see it's just going to ruin everything. So reflection, this is the first reflection you want to use, and we'll use a roughness here. I'm going to deactivate the solo, and we have this very weird result. Okay, actually the black surfaces here are just now pure mirror, pure reflective surfaces, and those surfaces are almost diffuse, and it just doesn't work, obviously, because we have too wide, our range is really too wide. So let's take our noise, and I'm going to change here the color. So I don't want actually to have black, and I don't want to have white. So I'm just going to change the value, and I'm going to have something which is very near the 0.4 value I had. So this is here the value. So let's go to 35%, and let's try for this one 50%. As you can see, it's going to give us those details here. So that was the look I was going after. So now I'm just going to try something more subtle here, around here, and we have some swirling pattern. Maybe I want to decrease this one here, so that we have only some very subtle swirls here. You see, now it works. And we could just decrease the octave. So let's take a look at the noise actually. This is our noise. Well, we don't see anything obviously because I changed too much the black and white value. But if I change the octave, I'm going to have a noise which is going to have less details, as you can see. So if I increase the noise, we'll have more details inside. Now we can jump back to our bump and add to the bump. And at last, we could just activate our random field back. And now we have our texture with different kind of details. We have some details due to the Maxon, to the noise on the roughness. We have some noise on the giving bump, and we have some details on the actual geometry. And everything works obviously with the light. If I'm going to change our light, the aspect of everything is going to change a lot, and so on and so on. So it's almost infinite, the possibilities. I've of course rehearsed this demonstration a few times, and every time I did it, I obtained a different result. That's what's interesting with art anyway. Every time you want to replicate something, you will have some different result. Sometimes nicer, sometimes it won't be as good as you wanted, but you're going to have different results, but the overall look will be almost the same. So from now on, I could just change the lighting and so on to better suit my purpose. Knowing that anyway, because I want to have animation, I want to have a background and so on, in the end, I will probably change a lot of things again. That's what I did with the original file you saw. I didn't have exactly that kind of texture because I made some tests. I could just show you a few render. Well, I wanted to show you that, how to create this title, for example. So this is a frost title using almost the same technique. It's actually the same lighting we have here, but using now some transparent material. This is another one which is much more complex. This is not, okay, yes. And this is a much more advanced text created using many things, different material and so on. I wanted to show you that. I wasn't fast enough, I guess. Maybe I can squeeze it at the next session. Maybe I can show you the transparent material. I don't know, Simon, are you still here? Do I have time to?
Absolutely. I was just going to jump in and say, absolutely, if you want to run on for a couple of minutes and just let everyone know, thanks for bearing with us. I think this would be useful just so you can see the closing up of Lionel's workflow and idea. But absolutely, if there's anything extra you want to squeeze in tomorrow or Thursday, we can do that too. But feel free to run on for a few minutes now. And thank you for bearing with us, everyone.
I guess this one I will talk about it a bit later tomorrow because it's much more difficult to have. But this one here is interesting because it's pretty simple once you know a few rules. Okay, so let's try it. This is a reflective and transparent material, so very fast. I'm going to create a new material. I'm just going to put that there. Let's create a new material. And this one, let's call it glass. And we have here on our preset some glass, and let's try the tinted glass right away. Okay, I'm going to add it to our object. And I think the same lighting is going to work for this one. Let's go back now to our rendering and let's see how it looks. So it doesn't look like much because we have to tweak a few things. So very fast, I'm going here on the, so a glass material, no diffuse as the metal. We have some reflection, but with the IOR of 1.5, that means it's not as reflective as metal. And we have the refraction, which is to 1. And because we don't see anything, it's because we have transmittance. And we just need to lower here the absorption scale. That means the thicker the geometry, the more color is going to stop. So if I decrease the intensity, we can see we have some details going back. Okay, but we don't see, it doesn't work that much because we still don't see, because we don't have a background. Okay, it's going to change if you have a background. And also if you're going to use here the scatter coefficient. Okay, so the transmittance is the color your glass material is going to have depending on its thickness. And the scatter is just going to add more color inside the transparent area, so the black areas. So first I'm going to change our color to something blue because I wanted to have some ice. Okay, and now I'm going here on the scatter coefficient, which is to 0. I'm going to pick whip this color and just going to use a slightly different color, a bit stronger like that. And then I'm going to add some scatter coefficient. And it's going to have a very big effect, as you can see. Just a few notch is going to give us that kind of look. And now I need to, for the lighting, here I'm going to go back to our dome light and we're going to use here a backplate. So backplate will be the image on the background. And I'm going to use this image and enable background. Okay, and if we go back here, you can see it has deep effect, deep impact on everything. So that's almost the, the conclusion. When you're working with glass, obviously your background is going to change everything. So here our scatter coefficient, if I put it back to 0, and you can see if I just increase a tiny bit, it's going to give us that kind of frosty effect. Now to have a better result, because glass is not that transparent, actually we're going to change the roughness. So this will be the reflection, reflection roughness, because it is linked to the refraction. So I just need to increase here our roughness. It's going to create that kind of frost effect. It's as simple as that, as you can see. It works pretty well. We still have our geometry giving us some details, and we could use the same tips, the same tricks I showed you with the bump map and the noise map to create some more variation on the texture. But basically, you have your frosty material just using this technique. So those are the value you need to tweak the subsurface with the transmittance color and the scatter coefficient, but a very, very low value, because if you just increase too much that, it's going to give us very different result. Interesting. You see, it still looks like ice, but deep ice, it's different. And if you increase your absorption scale, it's just going to give us some kind of subsurface scattering effect. It's very interesting to work with, but a bit difficult to understand and to really master. But you can see it works pretty well if you just punch low value and don't forget to increase the roughness. Okay, well, that's it. I think I'd like to show you the other one, but just going to take us to too long. So
maybe we can squeeze it in.
I think
session.
Because I didn't talk about bitmap and about the cloud, there are a few, yeah.
I mean, the detail you've gone into is amazing, and there's lots of comments about. I love Ken's comment. I've got to get this right. He says, "Watching Lionel make anything is always a wealth of knowledge." That's great to hear. And lots of interesting comments about your HDR or HDRI map, rather. And I wanted just to mention or remind everyone, you probably saw in the questions and answers, that Lionel has very, very kindly agreed to share his project files. And we put the links in already, and you'll get the link in the follow-up email, and we'll put the link in the descriptions on the YouTube recording. But that's HDRI file is included inside the package. But I just want to ask you what your opinion was. Do you think better to work with a series of different files like that, or is it better to just use one that you really know well, do you think?
Yeah, I really like, I'm always impressed, amazed by people who have like 300 HDRI map and they just click, they try every one of them, every 300 every time. For my part, like I said, I have like 10 HDRI. I know them by heart. I know exactly how they look when I just switch them around and so on, and I only work with those. That's my technique. I think it's easier for the mind to remember just a few HDRI, and you know what to use for you just know them. It's like tools, you know how to expect what's going to happen and so on. So I just have a few, in the end, I just use very, very few maps. Same thing.
No. That's an interesting technique, absolutely. I think you've got a couple of favorite LUTs as well that you use.
Yes, almost all the filmic LUT, I use them all the time. I'm interested in the OCIO workflow, which is even more advanced, but for now, the filmic workflow is pretty nice because it's going to give us good highlight, good balance of shadow, highlights, and exposure. It's easier to work with.
Fantastic. Excellent. So I'm just going to give people a reminder where they can see the recordings. Can I grab the screen from you?
Yes.
Okay, let me do this. And if you want to sign up for either Lionel sessions or some of the ones that we've got coming up over the next few weeks, this little plug for you, maxon.net, just go to the events section and you can see all these. And we have some great suggestions for more sessions like this, I think was the exact quote, because lots of people are saying how much they enjoyed this particular session and all the detail you've gone into, which is fantastic. Always, I knew this would happen as well. Always interesting stuff when you present, Lionel. Here's the recording, by the way, everyone. Here's just a reminder. It's just an open YouTube page, Maxon Training Team, which you'll find on YouTube, and we'll send you the link with the automated email that follows this. And in a couple of hours, you can see this recording with all the links that we mentioned earlier on. And in case you didn't see this at the beginning, Lionel's very kindly shared a discount on his amazing course that he has on Udemy. Well, he's got several courses on there, so we've added those links into it. But going through these details, the sort of details that he's been going through here, but in even more depth. So this is available. This one's in English as well, and you've got French ones available too, don't you, Lionel?
You see, yeah.
No, obviously, d'accord. Yes, exactly. So we'll share all that information along the line too. But I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next session. And thank you also to Darren for answering lots of the questions. We've had lots of questions about related techniques, and we might discuss some of those tomorrow. A lot of questions about, can I do this if I don't have Redshift? And the general answer, I suppose, is sort of, but not as quickly. But
yes, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly that.
Great. So that perhaps then when we're having a bit more of a discussion over the next couple of days, we can look into possible slightly different workflows. But I think that's the whole point when you're doing things like this. It gives you the extra creativity. But I know you're a huge fan of Redshift, and that's why you're using it.
Yes, indeed.
Great. Okay. Thanks for bearing with us for the extra time. It's always worth it just for a few minutes, but we appreciate that you've got other stuff to do. So we try not to overrun. I know I say that every time, but there we go. Great. So thank you again, and we'll see you on the next one. Hopefully see you tomorrow. All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.